You're listening to Right Where You're Sitting Now.
Welcome to another episode of Right Where You're Sitting Now. I'm your host, Joshua Lee. Today's episode is number 53, and our guest is Sarah Janes. Sarah is an independent researcher who is an expert in dreams, lucid dreaming, dream culture, dreaming practices of ancient cultures, all sorts of stuff involving sleepiness. She's also the host of a YouTube show called The Explorers Club. Check out her YouTube channel. It's super interesting. And while you're on YouTube, go find our YouTube channel and subscribe and leave a rude comment. We love those. Me and Sarah talked about a few different things. We covered how to train yourself to lucid dream, why lucid dreaming is good for you, why dreaming is good for you in general if you're not dreaming much like I don't, why we have recurring dreams, what to do about them. I think you'll enjoy it. Let's just let her speak for herself. Here is Sarah Janes, everyone. Your biggest project you got going on right now is the Explorers Club, right?
Well, it's just got really busy since lockdown. I've sometimes been doing like one a week, which is busy for me. And I've got really into ancient Egyptian research, and I started trying to learn hieroglyphs just before lockdown, and then lockdown kind of facilitated being a little bit more disciplined with it than I perhaps usually would be.
Yeah, I think I came across you talking about that in an interview recently. That's really crazy. You're like trying to teach yourself hieroglyphs? That sounds insane. What's wrong with you? Is it working?
Yeah, it is working actually. One of the things that really kind of compelled me to keep going with it was actually the more I read and looked at hieroglyphs, the more Egyptian symbols and hieroglyphic signs came into my dreaming. So it was a really good dreaming. It's actually a really good like dream incubation technique.
Well, I guess before we get too deep into anything, let's start with the bio. Drop your bio on us. This is Sarah Janes, everybody. And Sarah, why are you here?
Well, I suppose my entry into this kind of field of research is through running lucid dream workshops and giving talks about lucid dreaming. And the reason why I do that is because I've always been really passionate about the experience of lucidity ever since I was a kid. It was my favorite activity was dreaming. And then through the Explorers Club, actually, the little lecture series that I run, I've met lots of people from kind of academics to mystics, I suppose you might call them. And I've learned a little bit more about the kind of ancient ideas, I suppose, around dreaming and the possibility to incubate dreams for beneficial effect. So with regard to healing yourself physically and for emotional and psychological benefit as well.
Wow, that's interesting. There's a few things I need to come back to in this. One, I noticed you said that your favorite activity was dreaming. I think that's kind of an interesting way of describing it. Most people, it's not an activity, right? It's like an inactivity.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've been phoned up by like various small BBC radio stations so much during lockdown saying, can you talk to us about lockdown dreams? And everyone's having these really weird dreams. And I think people are just noticing that they're having dreams during lockdown and are perhaps not as comfortable with their psyche as they might want to be or should be because they are confused about what these dreams mean. And so it's been quite interesting, the lockdown experience, because people are obviously sleeping later. They have quite primal concerns on their mind, which, especially at the beginning of lockdown when the threat was a real unknown quantity. But also that was compounded with weird stuff like Tiger King. So people were dreaming about coronavirus as the invisible threat made visible through the form of aggressive tigers, or Tiger King himself.
Wow, that's so crazy. I hadn't even thought about that. That's wild. That's an interesting point that you brought up, that people are sleeping in. They don't have to go to work like they usually do. That alarm clock's not buzzing in their ear anymore, is it? Do you think that
They're worrying about specific things, which are kind of life and death. They're worrying about an invisible threat, and what the unconscious mind tends to try to do is give form to invisible things. So the most common lockdown corona vibe fear dream or anxiety dream was people crawling with insects or some sort of visible enemy, because we can't see the coronavirus, but we can kind of visualize it in that way.
Right, that makes total sense. How strange. That's really strange. That kind of brings up I've always thought it was really interesting that people have recurring dreams. Why do we have recurring dreams in the first place? Is it that sort of thing? Something that you're just trying to work through?
Yeah, it's usually stuff that you are trying to sort out, and dreams are a really useful place to sort out some of those problems, because you can do stuff that you can't do in your waking reality. They're brilliant for like the ending of relationships and stuff like that, where
Mhm.
you can't actually get that finality or that comfortable resolution that you might need. You can do that in a weird way in the dream state. I think it's almost similar to something like maybe magic mushroom therapy for couples, where you're at this impasse, but the altered state of consciousness that magic mushrooms or psilocybin provides gives you this open-mindedness and this flexibility to accept things that may not be part of your ability kind of within normal waking consciousness.
Is that I hate to look for a purpose in dreams, but is that like maybe the evolutionary purpose? Is that the evolutionary purpose you think of dreams, is maybe dealing with that?
There's a few arguments for dreaming, and in evolutionary terms, it is this idea actually that we get an opportunity to practice potentially life-threatening situations. And actually, it does seem to be in ancient cultures that the predominant feeling around dreaming involved the dealing with nightmares and sleep paralysis and scary dreams. So it may have been that as our like threat to life type situations reduced, we had other stuff to worry about, like photocopying and being in the office, and office politics or relationships have taken over. So there's definitely a cultural specificity to dreaming.
Right, but it's still kind of the same things, right? Just with a different our new masks on them, right? I mean, it's still our anxieties that we're running away from, just not tigers. Well, I guess now it is tigers again.
Yeah. Tigers and people with mullets.
Those are even more frightening. So, what got you going down this bizarre? I mean, I know you said it was your favorite activity was dreaming, but other than that, what got you wanting to do this full time, looking at dreams and?
I suppose it's always actually been my sort of biggest passion in life, is the experience that I had in dreams. They were the greatest kind of creative expression that I experienced. And also, one of the things that really interests me about the experience of lucidity is it's often accompanied by this bodily sensation of bliss, almost like orgasmic sensation. And I do compare like lucidity sometimes to the experience of having an orgasm, because when you're doing workshops with people that are like, oh, I think I've been lucid, or I'm not sure, it to me is that kind of experience where you kind of know when it's happened, that there isn't any doubt that it's happened, because there's this bodily bliss sensation associated with it, certainly for me and a lot of the people that I speak to.
So yeah, with lucid dreaming especially, like that's one thing I've never experienced, I don't think, but I've had dreams where I was definitely aware that I was dreaming, but it was almost like the person watching it was aware that it was a dream, but I couldn't, like, I was still acting out my part as though I thought it was real. Do you think that counts as lucid dreaming?
I think there's a scale like consciousness in general. You know, there are lucid dream experiences, or there are dream experiences that I have where, yeah, you know, you're in a dream, you're questioning the reality within the dream, and you know it's a dream. So, you know, most people that get into lucid dreaming start having dreams when they're a kid, and actually they do often stem from nightmare situations where a child will say to themselves within the dream, I know this is a dream, so therefore I'm going to wake up, or I'm going to fight this monster. So that's quite interesting in terms of the evolutionary purpose of dreams, because for the development of a human being, a lot of lucidity will come out of early childhood nightmare dream experiences, and then as we grow up we tend to have less nightmares.
You're familiar with astral projection, right? What is the difference, if any, between lucid dreaming and astral projection? Is that just another level of, or degree?
I see that as something quite different. I think lucid dreaming for me feels like a conscious creation of a dream realm within the dream state. And you can enter lucidity from being awake with the wake-induced lucid dreaming technique, where this is similar to dream yoga in Tibetan practice, that you kind of lie in your bed and you observe yourself traveling through hypnagogia, and you become aware of your thoughts, and you end up in a fully formed dream without losing your thread of like awareness of your journey into that state. And astral projection tends to be an experience that is believed to be a kind of etheric projection of your body into a realm that exists whether or not you're there. So it's conceived as being like another dimension that you're traveling through, but you are capable often of observing your surroundings and yourself in your bed, which you don't tend to get with lucid dreaming. Although you can use conditions, you can use situations like sleep paralysis to become lucid.
That's interesting. What other ways can you use to? I mean, I've heard the flicking the light switch method, right? Which how does that work if your lights burn out? That's what I feel like it would throw me into a weird disassociative state, like if I had a bad light bulb.
It totally depends on the person, I think, because wasn't that from Waking Life? I think my friend used to go on about that light switch thing all the time.
Yes.
And he also used to say to me, "And you can't read in a dream." And I was like, "I read stuff all the time in a dream." And then I went for a whole point of like making sure I was reading stuff and writing it down and then telling him the next day. So I think it depends on the dreamer. And actually, the thing that's helped me most is this concept of personal mythology, which was an idea conceived by Stanley Krippner and David Feinstein, I think, who wrote this book, Personal Mythology. And it's this idea of really working out what your own archetypal dream characters are, what your recurring motifs are. And I've always thought I wanted to be a film director when I was a kid. And I wanted to invent a machine that could record my dreams. And then that would save me a lot of legwork of being a film director, because I could just play that. And but that was my two biggest things with dreaming when I was a kid was, I mean, they were so amazing, my dreams, that I wanted to be able to film them and just show them to people. And then the other thing was I was so convinced of the sort of veracity of the dream creation that I thought that if I could master it and be lucid whenever I wanted to be, I would be able to transcend death and consciously enter the next life, or consciously enter a multi-dimensional experience of life.
Do you still think that?
Yeah, to an extent. I kind of think that the more you work on one of the things you get with dreaming is you get this exchange experience of memory. Like I sometimes in a lucid dream state feel like I can remember everything, and you get this experience of things just being on the tip of your tongue. And sometimes I feel quite overwhelmed with the amount of information you can take in a moment in a dream. And I've never taken psychedelic drugs, but I imagine it's similar to that experience, whereby you're not focusing your attention on one particular linear aspect of your view of reality, you're kind of taking everything in. You have a kind of omnipotence in the dream state.
Yeah, for sure. I fool around with lots of psychedelics, and for sure that's what it's like. Very dreamlike.
One of the things I've noticed with dreams is you see like close up and far away at the same time, things like that, for example, which are a bit overwhelmed in waking reality. So, and I do think of psychedelic drugs as being basically drugs that make you have a waking dream.
So this is kind of interesting. Back to what you were saying about moving past death. It reminds me, Grant Morrison, the comic book writer, in I think it was a Superman comic book, was talking about how when we die, heaven and hell are these, like, we build these like palaces or hells to live in, and it's weird. It's making me think of that. Do you think that this is is it that you like consciousness is timeless and you can like go and live in your own consciousness? What exactly?
I think we're doing that all the time. And one of the things I've noticed, because I've gone through phases of being like really excellent at lucid dreaming, and then it's gone on the back burner for a bit and I haven't paid that much attention to it. And then other times when I've just really been getting into it every night. And in some of those periods where I'm getting into it every night, I've started to become lucid and just observe the actual like texture and fabric of the dream and the experience of time within the dream state, and how what might be called a narrative later on actually plays out. And it usually is never a narrative. It's usually like a tapestry of a three-dimensional tapestry of things that weave together simultaneously. But when you wake up, you tend to write it down as a linear experience. And one of trying to kind of condense this into an idea about what dreaming does and what its purpose is, and probably what its purpose is in terms of our development as people with personalities, is that our personality is formed in the dream state, and babies spend an enormous amount of time in REM sleep because they're having to process so much in such a rapid period of growth with regard to their brain development and their body development, their experience development. And we are the people that we think we are, and we tell everyone and ourselves that we are. Like, we create ourselves through our thoughts and through the things that we say to people and our expectations. And in a dream state, you can kind of tweak those things, and you do become aware, especially if you keep dream diaries, that the dream landscape and the dream architecture is like psychic manifestations of your personality. And you start to see how buildings and landscapes are composite representations of your psyche somehow. Like, there'll be your childhood home, but it will be in a tree, or there'll be particular landscapes or particular countries or particular forms of transport. Forms of transport are huge in dreams. Like, train stations are really common dream destinations, and often like missing trains or not getting on the right train, or there being some complication about not having a passport. And all these things are manifestations and representations of your state of mind, your personality, your ideas about yourself, and your relationships to others as well. So if you can, I've found as well in good periods of lucid dreaming activity, one of the things I've found makes me really happy is when my dream version of myself is like the best version of myself, like the best possible version of myself. And that tends to influence life as well.
One thing that is coming to mind is, does the dream, like, why can't the dream just talk to you? Why does it have to have these symbols, and why do you have to read a dream, basically?
I think it can talk to you. And one of the things that's great about lucid dreaming is when you realize you're lucid, for example, if you have characters in a dream and people have different kinds of dreams, you can go up to them and be like, what do I need to know? And they can speak to you directly. And then in terms of symbolism, it is quite interesting why dreams do that. But I've thought about that a lot. And I think it's the most kind of primal form of communication, really. But maybe with our kind of distracted, media-driven lives, we've forgotten about it, and our dreams are trying to catch up with us in that respect. But I mean, I talk to people that come to my workshops that will dream about looking at Facebook, all night. So our dreams are changing to fit in with our lives culturally and emotionally.
And also, in a way, it's almost like stories kind of speak in that same language too, right? And so I guess you're right. It's like maybe the most primal language, yeah.
And you know what, as well, I do believe that most of the stuff that surfaces up in dreams does come from childhood and will come from, I mean, my mum and dad used to read me a lot of stories when I was a kid, and I do think about that sometimes being part of this. And I have particular themes and motifs in my dreams that I can identify with locations from my childhood having this like mythological meaning for me. And sometimes when you work out what these mean, like recurring dreams, when you finally work out what stuff means, you stop having the dream.
That's interesting. So, well, how do you figure that out? Like you were speaking earlier about like, I guess, figuring out your own kind of dream vocabulary. How do you learn your own dream vocabulary?
Well, I did this like experience, this like group meditation thing with Stanley Krippner, and one of the things he was talking about was like identifying your dream motifs. And I think he was talking about find the first lucid dream that you remember, because if you have a history of lucid dreaming, the first lucid dream I remember having was I was a small child and I dreamt that I was a cat sitting on a wicker rocking chair. And it was a really small, insignificant dream, but it was so amazingly real. It was mind blowing. And I could feel, like that omnipotence of seeing outside of the cat, being inside of the cat, observing the pads on my paws, like feeling the body of a cat and feeling this bliss sensation in the body of the cat. And I remembered that. And then I realized that when I looked at a lot of my other lucid dreams, there were always cats in them. And the cats actually got bigger as I grew up. They turned from like this little domestic cat to lionesses. And they became the trigger for lucidity, because I associated the lucid bliss experience with this big cat. How it would often start was there would be a lioness in a dream, and I would be scared of the lioness because it looked like it was going to go for me. And then that would make me realize that I was dreaming. And then I would wake up and then I would change the lioness into something else.
Wow, that's really interesting. Man, that sounds like you have so much more interesting dreams than I do. I have very, very dull dreams. Lots of walking around school,
Yeah, I think it's what you're into. And like I was saying to you earlier, because I got into Egyptian stuff and hieroglyphs, I dream about Egyptian stuff and hieroglyphs all the time. I mean, I think it's kind of simple. It's not a great mystery, really. And actually writing down things does have this power to manifest them in the dream realms later on at night. So if you write down what you want to dream about, and it's a really good tool for stopping recurring nightmares as well. If you write down like a good resolution that you want, just the process of imagining that resolution, imagining the scene, thinking about it, sows the seed for that. I mean, in and of itself, dreaming is an extraordinary altered state of consciousness. Like, people are really jumping on this psychedelic renaissance and talking a lot about psychedelic drugs and how useful they can be for people's emotional and psychological well-being. But people aren't really talking that much about dreaming, but they can be enormously beneficial. And you can within a dream, you can have a life-changing transcendental experience.
Is it true that doesn't your pituitary gland dump DMT when you dream? Is that true? I've heard that.
It's an idea. There's also an idea that DMT might be produced in the lungs, and it's thought to be potentially produced in the pineal gland as well, or a similar substance. But I don't know about the truth of all of that, but definitely I've had transcendental experiences in dreams. Definitely I've had like an experience of bodily bliss and joy. And what everyone knows, if they wake up from an amazing dream, they feel amazing all day. If you wake up from a horrible dream, you feel shit all day.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So I guess that means that all that those like dream dictionary books are nonsense, right?
I suppose if you studied a dream dictionary book and it's all you read, then probably your unconscious mind would start using all those symbols, and actually it'd be well easy to work out what your dreams were.
Right.
That was
So
your like data bank of knowledge and information. Then
So do you think the best way is to just keep logging your dreams and thinking about them and just trying to pull them apart in your own head and figure out?
but what I also think is be very selective about what you do choose to put into your mind and consciousness. So like be careful about what TV programs you watch or how long you spend on the internet and what films you watch, because those are actually the things that most often reappear in dreams. Because, you know, especially these days, people watch stuff all day long. And when I was a kid, I might have one TV program that I wanted to watch a night, you know.
Yeah, I actually the other night had a dream about Mario Kart, like all night. I kept waking up and going to the bathroom and coming back to sleep and going right back into Mario Kart. I was like, this is ridiculous, but that's it. That's exactly it. I don't think there was any symbol I need to suss out there. Exactly. Maybe stop playing Mario Kart all the time.
Yeah, I do wonder actually about computer games, and I think that there may be an element with virtual reality in particular whereby it may help entrain people to become lucid, because in the VR experience you are physically embodying the kind of avatar and you're wandering around this virtual space that's all around you, which is exactly what it feels like to be in a lucid dream without the kind of altered state of being asleep.
Have you tried VR? Is
Yeah,
it similar? Is it real similar?
I mean, it's when you're lucid, you are in this. There is the element where you know you're not related to the generation of content in VR, but actually, I do think it's probably less of a negative. It would have less of a negative impact on your likelihood of being able to dream, because one of the things that I think has changed people's natural ability to dream is the way we look at stuff. Like we're looking at stuff on flat screens a lot. And the way you look at that, the way you use your eyes is different to the way you use your eyes when you're traveling through space and you're walking, for example. And actually, some of the stuff I do in my workshop is just like visual entrainment to get you refamiliarize yourself with like staring into nothingness and looking through space rather than looking at a surface.
I heard you talking about this on in a recent interview about, I think you were comparing it to kind of the sight that you use when you looked at those old Magic Eye posters.
Looking through a surface, and actually that, you know, I used to do a thing when I was a kid where I'd put my palms into my eye sockets and then you look through this tunnel of stars. And the hypnagogic experience was always like that for me a lot as well. Like you're traveling through space and re-familiarizing yourself with that traveling through space to enter a dream. It's really like a really, really good skill.
Yeah, this is actually exactly where I wanted to go next, was to bring up that hypnagogic side, because when you said that, it reminded me it's kind of similar images, right? Could you explain to listeners exactly what hypnagogic imagery is and how that plays into all this?
So the hypnagogic experience is that period of time when you're in bed and you're starting to settle into sleep and you're drifting off and you see stuff, or you can even hear things as well. You can have audio hallucinations. So, you know, when you're lying in bed and you might hear a doorbell go or your name being called really loud or a slam or something, that's all part of it. And also you can get you can have like little snatches of dreams. So sometimes you'll be dreaming you're walking along a pavement and your foot will go like this, and that's called a myoclonic jerk, when you kind of like jerk in bed just as you're drifting off to sleep, and that's all part of the hypnagogic experience. And then on the other side of that, when you come out of sleep, you have hypnopompic experience, which is similar basically in terms of like the visuals when you're rousing out of that state of consciousness.
Is that kind of like that part where you feel like you're falling, maybe, or?
Yeah, sometimes, or can't move.
Yes, yeah, right. And it's associated with the imagery, right? That you see behind your eyelids. How do I've heard that you can use that kind of as a way to trigger lucid experiences. Is that true?
That I find this thing with having this soft gaze, like I was talking about, this like looking through space rather than looking at anything. If you can hold and maintain that soft gaze, it's almost like looking cross-eyed, actually. So as if you're looking through your third eye into that space, then what I found in terms of using that as an opportunity to get into lucidity from just getting into bed, basically, you start to observe the images that arise, but instead of focusing too closely on any of them, you just let them sort of wash past you. And then, I've had interesting experiences in hypnagogia where if you have a vague thought or you think of a word, that manifests instantaneously, and the longer you can maintain and hold and expand that state, that you start to see that everything, all the content of the dream as it arises, is formed out of those thoughts and feelings and words or snatches of experience that you had as you're drifting off to sleep.
So would it be helpful kind of to train, I guess, to use that specific technique to train during the day doing gazing, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's handy to use that technique at any time, because the more familiar you become with that looking through space and that soft gaze of observing without focusing, um, will help you become, because with lucidity, generally for me, I will suddenly look at something or remember that I'm dreaming. And then there's a particular way of looking in the dream state. I used to do a thing where I'd like hold my eyelids open to like really look at everything in the lucid dream. And then I remember one of the things when I started to research lucid dreaming was the guy that coined the term lucid dreaming. His name was Frederick von Eden. He described this technique that he used, because a lot of people's experiences with lucid dreaming will be very fleeting. A lot of people, especially kids, get into lucid dreaming and you get so excited when you become lucid that you wake yourself up, and that's a lot of people's experiences of lucid dreaming, is that. And Frederick von Eden talks about he used to spin when he became lucid to keep his mind focused in the lucid experience. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, I do that as well. And it's just a natural, intuitive thing that you do because you're conscious. You're so close to waking up that you've got to stay. And it's a very unusual, interesting experience.
So do you use one specific technique or do you kind of bounce around?
Well, I used to do something. For me, it's all about focusing in the dream carefully, and then sometimes too much focus is probably using too much of your frontal cortex, and that wakes you up. So you need to kind of look at things and move around, like don't spend too long looking at any one thing. So I tend to open my eyelids really wide and look around and keep moving my eyes but keep looking at stuff and moving my body as well, and then I'll settle back down into the lucid state.
Sarah, you're also an expert about the way ancient people practiced dreaming too. Could you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Well, I'm writing a book about that. So that's been my main area of research for a while. And then just during lockdown, I've got really into Egyptology, and I've been interviewing loads of Egyptologists. And one of my guests was this amazing Egyptologist called Kasia Zapowska. And she's an expert, and I think she's probably the only person in the world as an Egyptologist on ancient Egyptian dream life and sleep, and any text that's ever been written on the subject of dreaming, she knows about it. And she is an expert in the language and everything as well. So she has a kind of thorough knowledge of the subject. And it was really fascinating talking to her, because my initial focus has been on ancient Greek traditions of sleep temples, which were healing sanctuaries presided over by the god Asclepius, who is the god of dream healing, essentially. And from a lot of the books I've read, it was often claimed that the priest Imhotep was the precursor to Asclepius, but there's not really any evidence within the field of Egyptology, at least, to suggest that. But there are dream accounts, and it is really interesting, as I was saying before, that the preoccupation with regard to dreaming for ancient Egyptians was this idea of nightmares. And the reason that they were so scared of sleeping and dreaming was because during sleeping and dreaming, you enter the darkness, which was in the ancient Egyptian kind of creation idea and ancient Egyptian spiritual ideas. Darkness was that place where chaos and demonic things existed. So you had to protect yourself in that darkness. And obviously you're vulnerable, you're lying asleep. So ancient Egyptian people had little cobra little cobra statuettes that they would put in the corner of their room to protect them from nightmares in the night. And often it was also seen as an opportunity to commune with the dead, or that the dead, if they were so inclined, could punish the living in their dreams.
That's interesting. So they took dreams very seriously, huh?
I mean, we don't. Obviously, there's a lot of ancient Egyptian literature that's been found, and a lot of scrolls that have been found, but also there's a lot of stuff that's never been found. So all we're looking at is what's in the archaeological record. So there's loads more stuff than that, and I'm sure there will be some evidence found eventually for dream incubation in ancient Egypt, or for dreaming with intent and purpose at least. But there isn't actually an enormous amount in it. But I like the idea of ancient Egyptians protecting themselves against nightmares, and recognizing that darkness was this like potential abyss of chaos and demons is quite an interesting and different take on dreaming than what the ancient Greeks were talking about a bit later on.
Well, about those Greeks, yeah, you mentioned the Greek sleep temples. What were those exactly?
So Asclepius was the son of Apollo and the mortal woman Coronis, and he was cut out of his mother's womb while she was burning on a funeral pyre for cheating on Apollo. And he was taught the healing arts by the centaur Chiron, and a snake allegedly, he did a snake good favor in the forest. There's various stories about the origins of his magic powers, but basically he had the ability to heal, a magic ability to heal. And he was even punished for bringing people back from the dead because his healing skills were so excellent. And his symbol was a snake entwined staff. And snakes would be present in these temples as well, and were seen to be the theriomorphic form of the god Asclepius. So if a snake visited you in a dream, that would also be Asclepius visiting you in the dream. And the idea in these healing sanctuaries, and they were like health spas, I would say. Cold water bathing was a big part of it. I sort of joke that like Asclepius was the precursor to Wim Hof, like this bearded dude who liked cold dipping for healing and immune boosting purposes. So a lot of it was about ritual purification, becoming clean and pure and good. And then after this period of vote offerings and all sorts of things like this, and purification and ritual. We don't know that much about the rituals that happened in Asclepians, but there are rituals dedicated to mnemosyne, the personification of memory, which I find really interesting. So there's this recognition of the potency and the art of memory being necessary for good dreams. And when the time was seen to be auspicious, the therapeutae at the Asclepians would take you to a smaller chamber, which was believed to be the abode of Asclepius, and that would be the place where Asclepius could appear. And the idea was that you would receive this divine healing dream where you would be touched, or often the accounts report a kind of physically impossible operation in the dream, that when the patients woke up, they were spontaneously healed.
What do you think was the mechanism behind all that?
I believe that the dream incubation methods in ancient Greece would have been a form of suggestion and sleep hypnosis over a period of time, and the images in places like Epidaurus show this bed that the supplicants would sleep on, called the clinae, which is where we get the word clinic from. So a lot of our modern medical terms actually come from Asclepian terms. And so the clinae was this a stone bed with the skin of a sacrificed black ram on it, traditionally. And when you slept on this bed, and I think it's important to remember, it's not really a comfortable, relaxing, getting into our bed type bed. It's more like a psychiatrist's couch. And then you would have these temple attendants that would guide you into sleep. You'd often probably be relatively hotboxed in frankincense, because the votive of the fumigation was to mnemosyne was always frankincense, and frankincense does have this ability to kind of make memories come alive and to help you visualize things. So I think that you would be guided into sleep, and you would be so primed to dream about Asclepius because you've been in his sanctuary for so long. You've seen statues of him. There are snakes all over the sanctuary. I think you would be highly likely to dream about snakes. And so I personally believe, and this is what I'm trying to get to with my research and practice and testing this idea on other people as well, that the bliss state that you experience in lucidity is a kind of potential conscious link between the mind and the body, where you can influence the homeostasis response. So you could actually activate a faith healing response in your body, because actually the dream provides you with a visual a situation that you're feeling like you're experiencing. And I do think that your biology will kind of match that in the lucid state. I've had an experience where I was touched by a god and a light flowed through my body, and I had a physical experience of that. And I think that the lucidity allows those kinds of experiences to go somehow deeper with regard to the placebo effect being activated, essentially like a faith healing response. There's an action that occurs in the dream and it's matched by a spontaneously arising action in the body.
I was definitely gonna raise that whole point about placebo. Placebo is a very real thing that no one ever brings up, because it's just, we take it for granted, but it's magic. It's magic, There's something very interesting, and it seems the biggest part of placebo is belief, right? Even if it's belief in placebo. If you look at they call them nocebo tests or whatever.
Yeah.
But it seems like it would, being in a dream state would be even more convincing, and even
exactly, yeah.
Right. So
you would be experiencing it as 100% actually happening. So also one thing I was going to say is a sort of comparison as well with the Kundalini experience and the relationship perhaps with the snake there as well, that I think the Kundalini experience of like a flow of energy rushing through your body is similar to what you get in a lucid dream when you experience that bliss state.
Sounds awesome too.
Well, interestingly as well, like Asclepius was the wife or daughter, depending on what stories you read, Panacea was the name of his accomplice. And there's also this idea of the snake providing poison and panacea, like it contains poison, but that poison can also be used in very small doses to be a medicine. And the symbol for pharmacies all over Europe is still the bowl of Hygeia, which was associated with Asclepius as well, which shows like a serpent rearing over a glass.
Does this come back into your work with drink incubation?
Well, one of the things that I find interesting about the gods and this idea of creating form and personalities, I think is useful, because if you have an object or a personality, it's very easy to focus and direct your attention onto that and to adore that. That's why things like Shaktipat experiences work with gurus in terms of instantaneous Kundalini experiences, because the participants are like focusing all of their attention and devotion on this figurehead, and without a focal point, then it's really hard to generate that adoration, or that, because the adoration is just a very, very high feeling.
So that gives you kind of like a focus to I get it. Okay, that's interesting. That's really, really curious. I want to see how that pans out. You said you mentioned sleep hypnosis as part of this. I'm familiar with hypnosis. How does sleep hypnosis work exactly? The same way, except that you're taking advantage of the sleeping.
Guided. Yeah, well, I practice sleep hypnosis in my workshops. I've got some sleep hypnosis videos on my YouTube channel, and my technique is to guide people through hypnagogia and seed the hypnagogia with suggestions for the dream that they eventually end up into. And the hypnosis experience helps you to familiarize yourself with the hypnagogic state and become comfortable with it, because actually I think most people could do this if they just slept on their back like for a bit longer than they used to, because the hypnagogic experience usually occurs when you first get into bed and you're lying on your back, and then you start to get like really comfortable and really relaxed, and you roll over on your side, and then it's almost like game over for hypnagogia. You like start sleeping properly. So the sleep hypnosis is useful because it keeps you in that position and it familiarizes yourself, your mind to this experience of drifting off into sleep. Because I think that one of the ridiculous reasons why I got into lucid dreaming was my dad made me a cabin bed, but he never put like a protective like most people would have some sort of little bar to stop them from falling out, and my dad didn't put that bit in, so I used to just lie in bed on my back because I was terrified that I was going to fall out and kill myself. And I think that's actually why I started lucid dreaming.
Well, I don't know, man. I'm a back sleeper. I've always been a back sleeper. I've really never. I think I had one pretty intense lucid dream where it was weird. It was like I was kind of floating over this like forest, and I was started like, I don't know, like data was coming in about these different animals that lived in the forest and stuff. But then I realized what was happening, and like you said, I got really excited and pulled right out of it. So it kind of ruined it. But I think that's the only time really that I've ever had one that would actually count, maybe.
Well, it may be useful to go back over that dream and write it out and think about it and try to reimagine it, because I do think the process of writing a dream down is really more about the reimagining it with your conscious mind, and that is what seems to cement it into your memory.
So it seems like you keep bringing it up over and over again to keep that diary, keep that dream diary, right?
Yeah, it's really boring in terms of, people now want to know, what supplements can I take for lucid dreaming? What devices can I get for lucid dreaming? But actually writing down dreams and getting into the habit of writing down dreams and thinking about what you're writing down and reimagining it is the easiest, quickest way to start generating lucid dreams.
What makes like I have trouble remembering my dreams? What makes that happen? What would improve my memory? Maybe
the process of starting to do it, you get better and better at it, but also kind of knowing what helps. So for example, like I remember when I was a kid, when I used to wake up, I'd have like one really weak hand and I couldn't like hardly even move the pencil. I'd have been in such deep sleep. But I'd find that if I have my notebook and my pencil like in my bed next to me sometimes, that in itself reminds me that I've got to do it. And it does also mean that there's an element of my mind that's kind of conscious of the fact that it's there the whole time. And also I sometimes don't even open my eyes, or I definitely won't turn a light on, and I'll just scroll it down. And then, it's such an interesting experience that happens in terms of how your memory functions with regard to remembering dreams when you first wake up, because it's such a different kind of memory experience. It's not like remembering waking reality. It's really different. So sometimes you'll think you can just remember a little snippet, and then you write that snippet down, and then another bit comes and another bit comes, and it's really interesting. It's like this kind of excavation process.
So I really want to get back to this dream incubation stuff. What exactly is that? And could you explain the process? What does it do? What is it beneficial for?
The idea of dream incubation is that simply you sort of set an intention or an object to communicate, an entity or a god or goddess, or you set an intention to find some information out or to go somewhere. It's the sort of thing that you kind of use in dream remote viewing experiments. So it really is about setting an objective for the dream, and that can either be like a physical objective like healing, or a contact or an experience type objective like learning something about the best solution to a problem you've got in life, all kinds of things. So the way I use it is I use sleep hypnosis to do dream incubation. So I use like a relaxation meditation technique to working with the people that I'm working with to follow a certain objective and a certain goal dream, essentially. And usually I like doing like healing ones, so working with particular issues that people can focus on in their dreams and work on themselves. And also it's interesting to provide a room of people with the same sort of guided journey. It's so interesting talking to them afterwards about their experiences in that space, and them exploring areas away from the space that I'm describing. Like the whole other world is created through that guided journey in the hypnagogic state, because your imagination is kind of working with the hypnosis experience.
Does it almost sounds like it's like a kind of invocation technique?
I mean, some people will want to work with gods and goddesses. Some people want to use it as primarily like a well-being tool. You can use it for whatever you want to. So if you set an intention of meeting a god and you thought a lot about that god and you wrote your intention down and you imagined the scenario and you went to sleep telling yourself this is what's going to happen, and especially if you then did a sleep hypnosis, and in the sleep hypnosis you're talking about being on a journey to meet this god, then there's a good chance that you will create that experience for yourself.
Right, and it seems also just the way dreams work in an archetypal fashion, like you'd be able to maybe deal more directly with the archetypes than in your waking life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really is like the ideal, lucidity especially is the ideal state of the human mind and body, where there is maximum integration and maximum potential to consciously influence the physical body. And like you say, placebo doesn't really get much of a mention, but it's an extraordinary phenomena that's completely scientifically accepted. Faith healing is, given the right circumstances, it works. And actually, where and how is it working? It's working in our unconscious mind somewhere, in a level of our consciousness that can manipulate our physical makeup.
I'm fascinated with placebo, mostly I mean, this show is mostly about the occult and magic, but I'm always searching for the thing behind that, like where is that coming from? What's the mechanism? And I really wonder about placebo, and I think it's a shame that we kind of figured out placebo and we're like, all right, placebo. Like,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Why aren't we spending more time looking into what makes that work? That's weird.
Just dreaming, like I said before, in and of itself is a big deal. It's an amazing thing that we as human beings every night, or whenever we close our eyes and want to go to sleep, can have a psychedelic experience in what feels like another dimension or another world. And not only that, we can create the world and change it and manipulate it in whichever way we want. It's an amazing thing.
Do you find it hard to switch back and forth between the dream world and waking world?
I used to, when I was a kid, I used to like find this life really boring, and I liked dreaming so much. I dreamt a lot and I slept a lot. I used to draw maps of it, and it was just like amazing and adventurous and exciting and really beautiful and awe-inspiring. And then I did go through a phase where I started to feel like I was doubting reality and I could potentially go mad, because it felt like I was living in the Matrix, because the dreaming was more real feeling than waking reality. And then I had a kid, and that was very grounding. So, and then I kind of wasn't sleeping very much, so wasn't having lucid dreaming. And I realized that ideally you need a bit of both. You need a bit of awe-inspiring dreaming and a bit of grounded in reality.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to go to next, was the question about escapism. It seems like it's very ripe for escapism, but it's just, I guess the benefits are so big that you need to figure out how to balance it, right?
The benefits are really massive. You don't need a psychotherapist. You don't need antidepressant meds. You can really work on yourself and really get to the root of issues as well, rather than kind of plastering over the cracks.
So for someone who wants to start today, what's the first step? What do we do? Start looking for hypnagogic images and
I would say
practicing the gaze.
try to identify. Yeah, I would go for a three-pronged approach.
Okay.
So I would go for try to identify what your recurring motifs are in your dream life to date, and think about what they mean, what they really represent, what they mean, and why you might have them, and where they first occurred, and when your last experience of them was. And secondly, I would go for practicing your gaze with the pushing your palms into your eye sockets and practicing staring as if you're looking through your third eye. So, like, you're looking into blackness, like an obsidian mirror kind of thing. And then, thirdly, do some of my sleep hypnosis videos on YouTube and familiarize yourself and learn to expand the hypnagogic state and become aware of the mechanisms within it, so you can really hold on to the thread of your consciousness as you're entering sleep.
Right. Okay. Man, I'm gonna try again. It's been a few years. I kind of gave up, I think. Probably around the time.
A lot of it is just thinking about it, thinking about it and going to bed and being like, I'm going to have a really good dream tonight. And I've always found whenever I do lucid dream workshops, people then think about their dreams. They've been talking about their dreams. They'll go home and they'll have good dreams because we've been doing it all day. So you're very sort of susceptible to whatever information you put into your mind during the day tends to reemerge in the evening. So if you are thinking about good dreams or archetypal imagery or your recurring motifs, there's a good chance that those things will come up.
What about psychedelics? You mentioned how psychedelics might bring you into a kind of a dream state. Do you think that might take away from your actual dreaming time? I know people have said, I smoke a lot of cannabis, a lot, and people have said that that's a reason that you may not have dreams very often. Maybe you go too deep, I think like too deep asleep, and you just pass up that home.
You suppress REM, it suppresses REM sleep. So people do often find they have like what they feel is better quality sleep because they have a lot of deep sleep, but they don't have as much REM. And then, it's very kind of well documented, this idea that when you give up, you have this rebound thing where you get loads and loads of dreaming and it can become exhausting and too much for people. So then they start smoking weed again. And I've met people that smoke a lot of weed and they're like, I smoke weed so I don't dream because it's too full on.
Wow.
So, there's definitely, in my experience with people, that's often a big factor for people that come to workshops is they're not dreaming because they're smoking weed. And actually antidepressants also suppress REM. So this is why long-term antidepressant usage is so dangerous, because I get short-term usage because it suppresses REM and enables you to get deep sleep because you're, feeling less anxious and worried and depressed. So you're able to go to sleep, and then that can be restorative and good for you. But if you don't at some point start getting regular REM cycles, you're not resolving any of your psychological issues. And so you can end up sort of stuck in a rut for a long time.
That's so interesting. It's really interesting to think about it from a psychological aspect. I haven't heard anybody even argue that before. Is there anything that you're working on right now that you'd like people to know out there? I know you've got this Explorers Club show that you've been popping out pretty regularly.
Yeah, I've been doing loads. My next one is about the evolution of the spacesuit on the 2nd of September with Dallas Campbell. And then I've got 2 more Egyptology ones. I have Dr. Campbell Price from the University of Manchester, who's going to talk about material objects in ancient Egypt and their significance. And then also Ramadan Hussein, who's talking about his discoveries in Saqqara, because he's just been making this National Geographic TV show all about modern discoveries in Saqqara. And they found a mummification workshop and a priest and a priestess dedicated to like a really little known snake goddess. So that's really interesting. And then I'm doing a little panel this weekend at Medicine Festival in Aldermaston. And I'm slowly putting my book together. So that's my main thing, really. I want to focus on that and produce that. And everything's a bit different now with coronavirus. So most of my stuff has been going online, and actually it's been a great format for me because I live in like a little seaside town in England, and not many people used to be able to come to my club, but now loads of people can come because it's online.
Right, and it seems like like it's been coming out more frequent, right? Since
Yeah,
this
it's great. Yeah.
That's nice. I guess there's some silver linings here for people like us who like working from home.
I've had the time of my life. It's like amazing in Hastings. Like I went to London on Saturday and I was just like, God, I'm so lucky to live in Hastings because I've been swimming in the sea every day, walking in the woods every day. It's just been brilliant.
That's how, yeah, I live in Colorado over here in the States, and we've been pretty open this whole time. So when I hear like family who's from Texas or somewhere telling me about what they're going through, it's like, oh, wow, that sounds freaky. I just been wearing a mask. Everything else is seeming pretty normal over here.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Where's the best place for people to find you?
My website is themysteries.org, and that's got everything on it, all of my various projects.
How did you manage to get that one? That's amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good as well. Sounds really
cool.
Official.
Yeah.
I always think as well.
It's the mysteries. Not some mysteries, not a mystery. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Please come on again sometime and we can dig some deeper. I'd really like to talk to you some more about maybe like the Jungian archetypes and how they play out in dreams too. So
yeah, awesome. We should both just make sure we have really good dreams this evening.
I will definitely plan on that. I'll write it down. Write it down to remind myself later.
Yeah. Keep it in your bed and wake up when you have a dream and write it down then. I saw somewhere someone wrote about dream journals and they called them night books. And I was like, night books sound so much better and less new age than dream diaries. So I'm going to start calling it a night book from now on.
Way sexier for sure.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Sarah. We'll catch you on the flip side.
Brilliant. See ya.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, everybody. You may have noticed Ken Eakins wasn't here with me today. That's because he hurt his back. I think he was doing backflips off of his house or like trying out paragliding, something like that. You know how that guy gets. He's just a thrill seeker. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel. We're going to be having clips come out soon, and other video projects as well. Tell your friends. Like us on iTunes. Give us some stars. I don't know. Whatever they ask for. Thumbs ups. Pats on the backs.